I call this meeting to order. This is a Livingston Parish Council meeting. Today is May the 9th, and it's a few minutes after 6:30. We'll now have the invocation by Councilman Jeff Ard and Councilman Tracy Gurleyhouse.
We're going to ask Mr. Jim Ryan to lead prayer for us.
Pray with me, please. Most gracious and loving Father, Lord, thank you for all the many blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day. Lord, we would ask you to come into our hearts and help us to remember not to take those blessings for granted every day. Lord, we ask that you be with this council as they're here to make decisions for the parish. We ask that you be with our leaders in the State House, the governor. We ask that you be with our elected officials at the federal level as well, Lord, that they may all heed your will and do what is best for the country. In Jesus' name we ask these things. Amen.
Amen. All right. Pledge of Allegiance, I'd ask Mr. Bubba Harris to lead us.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right, cell phones. Let's all try to silence our cell phones, so we don't have any interruptions during the meeting unexpectedly. All right, public input. Anybody wishing to discuss or address any agenda item may do so. Once that agenda item comes up for discussion, you can simply raise your hand and we'll call upon you, and you can come to the podium and you can say what you got to say. We can give you 3 minutes. Try to do everything within your power to adhere to that 3-minute limit. And we're going to give everybody equal amount of time to talk tonight. But one thing I want to say is this. We don't want to get into trying to talk over the other one, Let's try to remain orderly and professional and polite. And when you do have something to say at the podium, try to address it to the council. Try not to turn to the audience and maybe address somebody in the audience. You really should be addressing the council whenever you come to the podium and have something to say. All right. So presentations, do we have? Oh, yeah, I skipped that a couple of times in the past. Roll call. Sandy, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Talbert?
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Here.
Mr. Wascom?
here.
Mr. Livell?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Averitt?
Here.
Mr. Ard?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Gurleyhouse?
Here.
All right, everybody's here. That's wonderful. Okay, adoption of the minutes. Agenda item number 8. April 25th, 2019, regular meeting of the council, and May the 2nd, 2019, special meeting of the council. Can we adopt those?
Can we postpone the special meeting until the next meeting?
They didn't come out on email.
Oh, yes. Yes, we can.
So the first one, 25th is okay, but
Okay, do we have a motion to accept minutes from April the 29th, 2019, regular council meeting? We have a motion by Scooter King. We have a second by Mr. Jeff Averitt. All in favor? Aye. No opposed? All right. Agenda item number 9. Adopt a resolution granting approval to Gravity Drainage District Number 1 to call and hold an election on Saturday, October the 12th, 2019, to authorize the renewal of a 5 mil 10-year on assessed valuation of all property in the district. And we have the Mr. Jim Ryan at the podium to
Answer questions.
answer any questions.
It's a renewal for Gravity District 1. That's it. 10 mil. 10 years, 5 mil.
I have a question. I just want to say, I guess, get it publicly. So this is the renewal of the Gravity Drainage District 1 tax. This is not for the boundaries stay the same for the district. There's nothing to do, but a tax has been approved. The same amount will be voted on again to renew the same, to fund the same type of operations for people who live inside Gravity District 1, which is Denham Springs, South Denham, I think it goes up in the Scooters District as well, so. And I said that because I had some people ask me, was this to expound boundaries or anything like that? I just want to clarify, this is to renew the tax for gravity drainage one.
And as you know, Mr. Wascom, when you renew a tax, to call it a renewal, you cannot change anything in the tax. It
Okay.
has to be exactly like it was when it was approved the first time by the voters.
Well, I tell you, I've really enjoyed having gravity drainage. Mr. Chris Whitmire sits on the board, and the gentleman right here as well. Sorry, the name escapes me, but, you know, when I have a problem, somebody calls me, especially in the rain season like we're having now. If I ask them to clean out a ditch, a culvert, they're really quick to have the manpower, the equipment to do it, so I'd
They
like
do
to
a
make a
very
motion that
good
we.
job. They really do.
So you need a resolution,
Need a motion and a second, yes, sir.
so I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. John Wascom to adopt a resolution granting the approval to Gravity Drainage District 1 to hold an election on Saturday, October the 12th, 2019, to renew this tax. We have a second by Bubba Harris. Is there any discussion from the audience on this particular agenda item? No? All right. Go ahead. We have something, Mr. Gary.
I think that people need to be aware, and I mean, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but we've seen taxes come before, not since we've been in office, but prior to us with respect to like the health unit tax, and there was some information that came out, you know, late in the election that kind of doomed the tax to failure initially. I think that people need to be aware that Gravity One has a tremendous surplus, but that surplus is earmarked for projects, and that they do have a surplus in the fund every year, but I don't know, based on their budget, but they're utilizing that money for future projects. And if a board member wanted to speak to that, or their engineer wants to speak to that, I think we need to let people know, don't go look at a financial statement, a week before the election and think that there's a bunch of money and they don't need the tax renewed. Those monies are earmarked for projects, and that, it takes time to get projects funded. And I think it's important that everybody know, that most of that money is allocated to do something currently, and don't think that there's a ton of money in the bank that's just sitting there. I think it's important to get that information out early and let people know about that situation. So I didn't know if there was some board members here that wanted to speak to that, or, an engineer with the one to speak to what some of those projects might be, or the amount of money they've got and what it's allocated to. But I don't want later on there to be, something come out, late that would imply that there was a surplus, that they didn't need the funds. That was my thought process.
I think that's very well founded.
Also, some of those funds could be set aside for matching on grants.
Yeah, well,
So, if you set aside a certain amount, and there's like an 80-20 grant,
we got some major funds.
you get all of it done for 20 cents on the dollar, because the grant pays it. You have to have that money up front in order to be eligible for the grant, so.
Yeah, well, since Mr. Gary asked the questions, I'll answer the best I can. I'm Derek Murphy, Quality Engineering and Surveying, representing Livingston Parish Gravity Drainage District 1. We do a lot of the engineering. We are the engineers for Gravity Drainage District 1 right now. We do have, we were fortunate, I say this, that the board had some forward thinking. We have done some large watershed studies prior to the 2016 flood. With that, we have close to 16 or 18 projects that we are worked on within the district to have some kind of grant funding. Because of the way the board has managed their funds, we have had the opportunity to match those grants, and that's what's coming up. There's some pretty large, we've even done some things recently, putting stream gauges in, close to 9 stream gauges, some dealing with flow and velocities, as well as just overall rain gauges, and compared that to the data that we had empirical. So we have actually data. Right now we can tell you at all 9 of those stations, and we give y'all log in, everybody can log into it. It's a public site. And you can go on there and see what the rain is, what the flow is in Grace Creek and other waterways. So we're doing a lot of proactive things, and that's what the monies are going to be used for, as well as the day-to-day operations, the maintenance and so forth that you see. There's a lot of equipment purchased, pontoon, a lot of pontoon excavators and so forth. So they are proactive. They are out there in front of everything. But the key is to have the money available to be able show the parish, show FEMA and RCS and so forth, and work with Mark Harrell and Parish President Layton and the council members to show them that we did have the money to do the match, and that allowed us to go after the grants and to help the residents of Livingston Parish Drainage District 1 and Livingston Parish.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
I just wanna add to that, if you don't have one of Derek's koozies, your life is not complete. Because I've got about 10 in my truck.
I had a motion.
Is there anybody else that has anything to say about this? We have a gentleman that wants to speak there, Mr. Jim.
Hey, I'm Shane Marler. I have 3 questions on this. So I'm assuming this was a 10-year renewal. 10 years ago, this was a tax. So how many houses were being collected on taxes 10 years ago? And what was the revenue? And what's the houses now collected? And what's the revenue?
That would have to come from Randy Smith. He's the accountant for the district. That's no good for us to know that.
Well, I can add to that we know that when we all ran for our election, our districts were all pretty evenly at about, it was around 13,000 in each district. We just did the numbers a while back, and John's district, which I think is the majority of this, almost shrunk in half after the flood. So where he had about 13,000 people in his district, he's down to about 7 now because of people moving out of that district.
So I was asking about the homes.
Yeah.
I mean, they have more homes now than they had 10 years ago in that district. I know there's more than 7.
Yeah, Shane, we're just not privy to that because we're not the board for that. That would be a better question to ask at the board meeting. For
So I guess where I'm asking is,
more houses, more income.
is more income, is
Yeah.
the 5 mills, I mean, is that what's actually needed for that?
Yes. I've been to their meetings and they're doing great things with the
No,
money.
I'm not saying, but what I'm saying is in 10 years ago, you didn't have the houses that you have now. So
Right.
just by natural progression, that's gonna create more revenue.
Shane, I think the thing to address is that some of these gravity drainage ditches they originally funded cut grass and sprayed poison in ditches to keep grass back. And Gravity 1, because of the revenue and the growth of the district, has done things that I wish we could do in Watson, but we don't have the tax base to do it. And so they're more proactive, and they look at hot spots within the district, and they're able to go after grants because they have match money, where some of us still have districts that because of the ability or the revenue that we have are still cutting grass and mucking out ditches and spraying poison and don't have the ability to have proactive type projects that would ideally benefit the district. So, I mean, yeah, is the revenue from the 5 mills 10 years later probably substantially higher than the 5 mills 10 years ago? I would hazard a guess there's probably been an increase.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the projects that they're doing and the benefit to the district has increased over that 10-year period also. That was my main reason for making the comment, is I don't want people to get confused that because there's a surplus or because their budget's going up, that there's no need for the tax. I think that it's important to realize that the money isn't sitting there just collecting dust. The money's sitting there doing things to help make the district better and to make the water flow better and to look at, retention and other things that would benefit the district as a whole. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know the numbers. If I was taking a wag at it, you got the numbers, Derek? I think Derek can tell you what the budget what revenue was 10 years ago versus what revenue is now.
Not the revenue, I got all the buildings, structures and so forth, he's talking about
okay.
the amount of homes. Just so y'all know, 53,000 residents, or 41% of all Livingston Parish is within Gravity Drainage District 1. 29,700 some odd structures, and almost 26,000 homes are actually in Gravity Drainage District 1 as a total, which includes several council districts. 16 schools, 8,000 students go there. We pulled all this off of the GIS systems and so forth, 13 governmental buildings. You know, part of this, talking about looking at with the renewal, you know, we got over 100 miles of tributaries that we keep up, 100 miles. And so, you know, when you're looking at 41% of the population is of the whole parish is in this one district, and making sure that those tributaries are paramount, making sure that those stay clean and so forth, it is a large task, and they do it very efficiently. 18 full-time employees, and all the equipment and so forth. But the biggest thing is proactive and looking at these long-term drainage projects in order to help this region. So when this region, when this Gravity Drainage District does something, it affects almost half the population of all Livingston Parish.
And with the Grace Creek project that we're getting ready to, you know,
Yeah, we're looking
that's
at
a major,
we're looking at widening, adding bridges, changing. It's going to completely change all the way up into Denham Springs, some of that waterway and how all that water comes out of Denham. So once those projects get funded and move forward, that's going to be
we're gonna
major
get
for
it down to
that.
your house real fast.
And look, I wasn't saying it was a bad thing.
Oh, no,
I was
I
just trying to
get
get
you.
the numbers,
It's
because I
good to
know
know.
it's increased over 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
think,
understand cost has increased over 10 years.
I think that probably one of the councilmen that represent that district could get a copy of the budget. I was
Yeah.
looking on my phone because I had it emailed to me before, and I could probably tell you what the revenue stream, what the revenue of the 5 mills is. I couldn't tell you what it was 10 years ago. And so, I mean, I think they can get it for you, but, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure they can answer
I
that
think the
question.
revenue
One
from the
thing-
5 is around 750 a year, 750,000 a year. So if it was to go away, it would put a real damper on any major projects, you know, and match money would go away.
I wish we had a district, that district right there parish-wide.
We need it. Need it
That's
bad.
that's what Livingston Parish needs.
Yeah, one thing too is, from 10 years ago to today, is the amount of development we've had. And with that development comes more drainage that they're having to use the money for to clean all that out too.
Yeah, yeah. Anything off-street,
Oh, yeah.
off-road is done by that district.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Shane. All right, you got a,
Yeah.
We got a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion. Who made that motion?
John.
John Wascom made the motion to adopt the resolution granting approval, Gravity Drainage District 1, renew that tax. Who made the second? Bubba Harris. All right. I call for the vote.
Mr. Talbert?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes.
Mr. Lovell?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. King?
yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
All right.
What else you got?
Agenda item number 10, adopt a resolution granting approval to Fire Protection District number 7 to call and hold an election on October the 12th, 2019, to authorize the renewal of a 10 mills tax on assessed valuation of all property in the district for a period of 10 years. Mr. Jim, would you like to?
And a service charge in the amount of $32 per annum for each residential or commercial structure for a period of 10 years.
Okay.
So it's a renewal of both of those, the 10 mil property tax for 10 years and the $32 annual,
It's in the resolution.
$32.
Yeah.
Okay, it's in the resolution.
It's in the resolution, it's in your packet.
That's in my district, Toledo Volunteer Fire Department,
Yep,
and those guys do a heck of a job, and I'm very proud of them. They work hard at it.
good.
And they do a lot with not much money. That $32 parcel fee generates less than $50,000 a year for them.
Like 38.
Yeah.
All right, this is also a renewal. Is there any discussion from the audience?
Takes a lot of volunteers for that.
Any more discussion from the council? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Jeff Averett to adopt the resolution granting approval to Fire Protection District Number 7. And there's a second by Mr. Bubba Harris. Call for the vote.
Mr. Talbert?
Yes.
Mr. Matt?
Yes.
Mr. Wasbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Liddell?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Y'all have a safe.
Thank you.
Be safe, drive home.
Thanks for your
Be
explanation
careful
and your
out
help.
there.
Appreciate you. Agenda item number 11, the parish president's report. Is there any report? No report? All right, agenda item number 12, planning department. We have, come on up, Mr. Sam DiGeronimo, the planning director here.
Honorable Mr. DeGeronimo.
Honorable.
Okay, guys, first on the agenda will be Cedar Gardens, second filing, accept roads and improvements into our maintenance systems. We have a road out there and done all of our inspections, so it looks good.
Everything
This
is,
is in Mr. Tracy's,
everything
district.
looks good and
All good.
up to your standard?
Yes, sir.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse to accept these roads. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Scooter King. Before we vote, I'd like to see if anybody in the audience has anything to say about this. No? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Next, same subdivision, to release the maintenance bond. Did you vote?
We voted to accept the road and improvements into the maintenance system, and now we need to release the bond, to vote to release the bond.
Yeah.
All right?
It's a recommendation by our planning department to release the $89,847.65.
I'll make that motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor by Tracy Girlinghouse to release the bond. We have a second by Scooter King. Any discussion from the audience? No? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right,
Thank you, sir.
all right.
Now going on to our planning commission agenda. First on the agenda is Bay Road Estates, a subdivision without improvements. This is in Mr. Tab Lobell's district. Is it recommendation of Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the subdivisions without improvements for Bay Road Estates?
Okay, is there any discussion?
Planning Commission approved it, talked to Derek about it, all looks good, so I'd make the motion that we accept.
We have a motion on the floor by Tab Lobell to accept Bay Road Estates subdivision with improvements. We have a second by Jeff Averett. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right.
Okay, next on the agenda is a commercial development. This is in Mr. Scooter King's district, pipe and steel industrial expansion, preliminary site plan. It is a recommendation of the Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the preliminary site plan for pipe and steel industrial expansion.
Yeah, that's on a road in my district. College Sparks owns the place and he's doing a great thing. He's updating all the frontage, rebuilding the building, so it'll be really nice to represent his company when people come in, because he does some major stuff for Big Dog, Exxon, Dow, people like that. So I think it'd be great. And I make a motion to accept.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to accept a preliminary site plan for pipe and steel industrial expansion by Mr. Scooter King. We have a second by Mr. Jeff Ard. Is there any discussion from the audience?
He's a good neighbor,
That's
Yes, he is.
wonderful news.
Yep,
a good neighbor.
it's starting to look good over there, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
he looks good, he don't, no noise after dark, he's a good neighbor.
Yeah,
All right.
appreciate that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right.
Okay,
13C.
next on the agenda is also a commercial development, hair razor site plan with waivers. This is in Mr. Jeff Ard's district. It is a recommendation of the Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the site plan with the waiver of gravel for 24 months.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Sam, this is, we talked with her about the fence.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So they're
Addressed
gonna
all
install a
that.
fence. The only waiver she's asking for is to give her 24 months to get the hard surface in place.
And I'm good with that.
Wayne, are they gonna pour an apron, concrete, and then put gravel, or is it gonna be gravel all the way to the road?
Well, Billy Taylor and them's doing the project, so I'm sure that probably for safety, I would think, it's not mandated, but I'm sure she will probably want some type of little concrete apron to pull out on the highway before she goes in with the gravel. I mean, that's just, something that's.
I just didn't know if it's noted in the site plan.
No,
where
it's
it
not
was-
noted.
No, it's not
Not
noted.
noted.
Okay, Jeff, was that a
I'm good with
motion?
it. I'll make a motion, yes.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to accept the site plan with the waivers that was discussed for hair raisers. We have a second? We have a second by Bubba Harris. Is there any discussion from the audience? No? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? All right.
Okay,
13D.
next on the agenda is a waiver on the number of lots on a servitude. This is in Mr. Tab Lobell's district. Miss Elizabeth Williams. It's a recommendation of the Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the waiver on number of lots for Miss Elizabeth Williams.
I went there and looked at it with her husband Robbie, and it's not a bad deal, looks good, so I'll make that motion.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to accept this division of property, waiver, number of lots on the subdivision, lots on the servitude for Elizabeth Williams by Mr. Tab Lobell. We have a second by Jeff Averett. Is there any discussion from the audience? No? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope.
And
13E.
just for your own information, it's just one lot extra that's what's being added. Okay. Next on the agenda is a commercial development, Louisiana 16 Machine Shop. This is in Mr. Scooter King's district, Highway 16, right north of Lockhart Road. It is a recommendation of the Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the preliminary site plan for Louisiana 16 Mechanic Shop.
Well, I didn't get a call on this from the developer or anything, and that ain't that important. I don't need to know everything, but talked to the planning commission, they said everything fit.
Yeah, it's
right.
a small little place.
Just a little small place right there, north of Lockhart
That's
Road
correct.
on Highway 16.
Right there next to the,
Got city sewage, it's all there.
it's got all
Yeah, so I'll make a recommendation to.
those storage, mini
That's a
storage.
motion, Scooter?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to accept the preliminary site plan for LA 16 Mechanic Shop. Do we have a second? We have a second by Bubba Harris. Any discussion from the audience? Nope. All in favor? Aye. All right. Any opposed? Nope. Good.
Okay, guys.
13F.
Brad Woods, a waiver on the number of lots on the servitude. This is Miss Shane Mack's district. It's a recommendation of the Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the waiver on number of lots on a servitude.
That's right. So,
It's just one over also.
it's just one over. He's taken 6 acres and divided it in half. It's 2 3-acre lots. The only reason he actually needs it's big lots. The only reason he actually needs the waivers because one of those lots on that servitude happens to be a half acre and not a full acre. He wouldn't even need under the current ordinance a waiver. So I'm all in favor for this.
I'll make
It's a
it.
great. All right. So we have a motion on the floor to accept this waiver, number of lots on a servitude for Mr. Brad Woods by Mr. Bubba Harris. You hadn't made that motion?
Yes.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Jeff Averett. Is there any discussion from the audience? Nope. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right.
Okay, moving right along.
Yep.
Next, commercial development, Coburn's Administration Building. This is in Mr. Tracy's district. It's a recommendation of the Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the preliminary site plan for the Coburn's Administration Building. You know where that's at, Tracy?
Yeah,
It's
Coburn's
a half
Supply.
mile closer to Denham,
Yeah.
where Burgess comes out into 190.
Pretty close where the Gator Millworks is being built.
It's right there in that same vicinity. That's
Yeah,
correct.
this administration, but I don't see a problem with it because
They
Planning.
building it the same place they have now?
no.
No,
You know where Gator Mill Works is
Yeah.
built?
It's right-
It's almost
right there.
across the street from them, but a little closer to the
Okay.
Burgess
All right.
intersection.
Oh, yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Tracy Girlinghouse to accept a preliminary site plan for Coburn's Administration Building.
I'll second.
There's a second by Mr. Jeff Ard. Is there any discussion from the audience? No? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? All right.
Okay,
13H.
last on the agenda is a minor resub. This is for Mr. Robbie Shillings. This is in Mr. Gary Talbot's district. This is, it's a recommendation of the Livingston Parish Planning Commission to approve the minor resub for Mr. Robbie Shillings.
Yeah, this is a holdover from a previous deal where the gravity drainage was concerned about some stuff in the servitude, and that's been taken care of, so I'd like to make a motion.
So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Gary Talbot to accept this minor resub for Mr. Robert A. Shillings. Is there a second on the floor? There's a second by Mr. Scooter King. Is there any discussion from the audience? No? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Fan.
Agenda item number 14. I will now open a public hearing. Sandy, will you read the ordinance?
Yes, sir. This is proposed ordinance 19-12. This is an ordinance to amend chapter 13, planning and development, article 5, flood damage prevention, section 13-76, methods of reducing flood losses, part 4, by establishing criteria for adding fill dirt to individual lots, tracts, parcels of land in and for the parish of Livingston.
Okay, Tracy,
Yeah.
you got something to say?
I'll say we had a meeting, a special meeting last Tuesday on this. We had, was it Thursday?
Yeah.
Thursday morning.
We had a lot of people that showed up, a lot of engineers, we had some developers. I think we got a lot of good information from this. I think we also realized that we do need to tweak this a little bit. We do need to do something, but we need to make sure that what we do is right. And it's kind of hard for us right now to break it down into areas. You know, we almost have to write something that's a blanket for the whole parish until we get a master plan. Now, the master plan is going to allow us to break this down into individual areas. But we're going to work and try to come up with something that everyone can agree with until we can get to that point where we can break it down into individual areas. You know, and do you want me to make, did you say anything?
I originally agreed to get this out of the, I thought it lingered in the ordinance committee a while longer than it should have. So I know I wanted to have the meeting, that the special meeting where we could get the people in here that Thursday morning, and it was very informative. To the point where I know there is a lot of unanswered questions. I don't want to overstep. I want to be cautious in imposing limits and restrictions on certain areas or certain people in the parish where it's unnecessary. However, I do believe that something must be done. I would like to make the motion to send it back to the ordinance committee for review. But, you know, I guess the proper, how would you, Ms. Sandy?
Close the public hearing.
Let me see if they-
No, I know.
Let's don't close the public hearing yet, because
Yeah, so we're just
Yeah.
We're discussing what we'd like.
discussing the
Yeah.
public hearing right now, and we'll get
Yes,
those motions
yes.
in
I
just a
would
few
like to
minutes.
I would like to send it back to committee for review. So.
Okay, all right, good. Appreciate y'all's input there. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this particular agenda item?
Well, Shane,
Hey.
DOT sent a representative tonight to answer some questions that we might have. They sent somebody to Ascension last night, and they sent a representative tonight to answer any questions we might have. So, you know, if after,
Certainly, we'll get
after
to them.
people say what they gotta say, I'd like to,
Invite them to
invite,
come say something.
invite Ms. O'Neill up to speak on behalf of DOT and answer any questions we might have.
Perfectly fine. So ma'am, could you state your name and address, pretty please?
I'm Vanessa Thompson. I live on North Door Road. And y'all don't frown when I walk up. I'm sorry. I just have a question on the ordinance that I don't think I ever asked before. And I don't know, since you might be sending it back to the thing, if, you know, this might be something you're working on. But does it include like subdivisions or re-sub properties or new growth, new building and stuff like that? Will those restrictions count for those things also and not just individual houses and stuff?
Our subdivisions already have strict rules. They already have to do drainage impact studies. If it's gonna impact, they have to do retention ponds, ditches, subsurface drainage, whatever they have to that not impact the area.
I can answer that too. It would affect every single residential structure built in the future in Livingston Parish, whether you were in a subdivision or if you were on private property outside of a subdivision.
Yeah, every permit would go
permit.
through the process. Now, we offered, I mean, sitting here last Thursday morning and listening to different comments, and then got a bunch of emails from different engineers and some developers and about concerns they had, and I put a list of amendments together and emailed you all, and maybe Miss Sandy can post it. Not stuff, just stuff for people to start considering and look at these amendments that we put on it. They're not finalized, they're just suggestions, and maybe we can get it up on the website so everybody will have an idea of what some of these proposed amendments are, and people can evaluate how that amendment affects them. But in essence, this is part of the permit process as it is now. So yeah, every time a permit would be issued, it would be everybody that built or
No matter if
commercial
it's,
would be
yeah,
affected.
large.
So the individual house, when it's built in subdivision, would go into this.
Would go
So
into that.
when the subdivision itself is developed, they have their own rules.
So
They're
it
pretty strict.
wouldn't apply to the development of the subdivision, but it would apply to the house being built in the subdivision. So that if the base flood changed or the flood zone changed during the development of the subdivision, then the next piece of, like, if you had a flood zone change in a subdivision, then definitely the next time a permit was pulled after the zone change, that it would impact it more than it would prior to the flood zone. But it would still address mounds of dirt next to your neighbor, so.
So-
Thank you.
So Gary,
Thank you very
in
much.
essence, what y'all are doing with your amendments, or your list of amendments, would be to, y'all would work through that in ordinance to get that in there and get it right before we would.
Yeah,
say it again?
I guess in my thought process is as we listen to what people talked about Thursday and the concerns they had, that, you know, one of them was Eddie talked about the 24, you know, we talked about 24 inches of fill, and then Eddie talked about, we typically like to go 10 feet out. Well, if you go to 36 inches and then apply 3-to-1, depending on whether you had 24 inches of fill or 36 inches of fill, you'd go to 9 feet or 12 feet past the house in the tapering of the dirt. So in essence, you get close to that 10-foot number that he was talking about. And there was a lot of concern with relation to flood zone X. So there's a part in here that kind of addresses special flood hazard areas. And the reason we put that in there is because there's a good chance when the new map comes out in 2020 that maybe the only X thing in the parish will be the cell at Woodside, and everything else will be A and AE. I mean, there's no need to fight over something that's a concern right now that might very well change within a year to kill a piece of legislation that has potential. So we looked at all those concerns. You know, where do we shoot on a 5-acre piece of property if we're just building a house? We addressed where that goes. All those things kind of got addressed in this little revision here so everybody can read it and look
Yeah,
at
I
it
agree. I
under
think that's a good idea,
consideration.
because we knew we were gonna have to amend, we just didn't
Well,
know exactly what.
it's been a work in progress, and we've been getting emails, and I think some of the questions
Oh, I get questions every day.
generated answers from some engineers and developers in the.
So where we're at right now with it, the ordinance that was being introduced and all that, the dirt field, the limitation on it, so that's just kind of laying right now?
It's basically, we realize there's some issues. The council probably, after the public hearings go, there'll be a motion to send it back to ordinance. And then the ordinance committee will work through these amendments, and hopefully people will come participate in the ordinance committee meetings as we're going through them to work these amendments, so that when we resolve the issues, we're able to bring it back to the council for consideration. Because obviously, right now, there's so many questions that we need to resolve some of these issues. And so, there were legitimate concerns by people brought up Thursday morning, that as we had worked through the ordinance and got comments from engineers and developers, that they hadn't really thought about. And so, and we hadn't thought about, because it was a cooperative effort in asking people questions and getting information. Look, the city of Denham and the city of Walker have hired somebody to write their ordinance with respect to dirt field. And we've done this at the council level and the committee level, asking questions and trying to gather information. And so, obviously, none of us are engineers here. We're taking input and trying to group that into some piece of legislation that resolves the issues. And we've got a way bigger, diverse, type of geography within the parish than those cities do. So I think, given the situation, that looking at the issues that were brought up Thursday, we need to send it back and evaluate it in a better light, or have more comment from the public without being rushed.
Yeah, I think if we get it right, it'll be more palatable to everyone, and fair to them too, at the same time.
That's a good lady right there.
Is there any more discussion from the audience? Come on up, man.
Hello, I'm Judy Whitmire. I reside at 27781 Louisiana Highway in Denham Springs. And I appreciate that this task is very difficult and complex for all of you. And I'm thankful that you are taking the time to do the studies, to get the advice from the experts. And I want to speak in support of the ordinance changes, the limits of the landfill, the land, field dirt. What you do in one area impacts another area. So yes, it does need to be a parish-wide effort. And someone said something earlier about it's one parish, and we are one parish, and so it's not just those that are in the heavy floods, high flood zone areas, but everyone. Whatever is done in one area impacts another area. So with the new development and new growth, it does put a strain on the current infrastructure. This piece of it, this ordinance, is only part of that big picture.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
So that's another very complex part to consider. So the point, I guess, that I'm trying to make is, with the current situation, there are issues that need to be addressed as far as drainage. And from what I'm gathering, there's a lot of effort being made in that regard. And again, I appreciate that. So just please take that into consideration when you're studying this ordinance and the changes, that whatever is done with that is going to affect the entire infrastructure. And the burden that's put on it by new development, which is wonderful. We want our parish to grow. But there are issues, that need to be addressed. I don't think anyone can deny that.
No, ma'am.
Nope.
and they're all in play now. And with the drainage improvements and improvements we've been making to some of these things, I think we'll see a drastic improvement in the flow of the water. So I can't wait for that day to come.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
you.
I agree, we are
Thanks, Shane.
one parish, but we are a fairly diverse parish as
We
well.
are.
Yes. So.
Oh, and there's no doubt that.
Is there anybody else from the
A wind will
audience?
affect you that doesn't affect me, you know what I'm talking about? So there's different
Yeah.
things.
My name is Perry Piku. I live in Marlboro, Bear Island, really, Denson. 5 generations, born and raised. I'm not a move-in. And I like what Gary's trying to do, because I seen the pictures. And couldn't you write something simple where if a house was within so many feet from another one, you couldn't pile so much dirt up, Gary?
Look, I
To
wish.
simplify that?
I
know.
wish we, look, what I started out with was pretty simple, and when you put the legalese behind it, it gets way more complicated, and trust me, I wish you could go back to something really simple, but there's so many different variables that come into place, and I'm amazed at how much I've learned in the process of talking to floodplain managers and talking to engineers and talking to developers with respect to this. Ideally, it would be simple, and you know, we probably could simplify it, but if we did, it would have to be stricter. I mean, and I guess in an effort to try to move us in the right direction, we were interested in making compromises to get the legislation through. And you know, to be honest, it ought to be, instead of 24 and 36, in the best case scenario where we protected everybody and everything, it would be 0 and 0, but that wouldn't even come close to even getting out of committee. So we're trying to move something in a direction that after it was in place for a while, we realized that the sun's still rising in the east and still setting in the west, and everybody's not being destroyed. And then we could make another step in the right direction. That just change is something that's hard to get moving. It's kind of like when your car runs out of gas and you stop, it's hard to get it rolling, but after you get it rolling, it's not that bad to keep pushing on it. So, I mean, that's all I know to say is I wish it would be simple, but when you're talking to these people that are experts that have to interpret it and start enforcing it, and they go, well, what about this little deal? And what about this little deal? And that's why it grows. Trust me. The first thing I wrote on a piece of paper was really simple. And as you get input, more input, it definitely gets way more complex. There's a whole paragraph in this amendment that just clarifies what base flood is or something. I read it and read the comments, and I'm like, that's a lot of words to say the same thing in my opinion, but they tell me it needs to be that way.
Y'all gonna do away with this one and write a new one?
Well,
We're discussing on
we're discussing that. I mean,
I
don't
would
get me
like
wrong.
to see that happen, because the area where I live at is kind of rural. It's all family land. People got a good bit of property, you know. They also got camps along Highway 22. A lot of people move in, a lot of people rent. But the original people who's been down there all their life. You know, generations and generations. Hurricanes impact us a lot more than the rain was. And we got Ascension Parish with the pumps.
Yeah.
That's killing us
Steady pouring
big
it on.
time.
Yep.
South wind.
You know, I mean, I done moved twice. I was born and raised down. I done moved twice, about 2 miles up the road. I had never flooded. Never. This property, what I got now. My son's getting ready to build on this property. And, you know, I seen the flooding around. And I'm afraid because the water levels keep getting higher and higher. Hurricane Isaac was the highest water that we ever had. It was 8.5 inches higher than the flood in 2016. Okay, I know Jared Graves got the parish lots of money. Right now they're doing a beautiful job of cleaning all the canals, fixing the drainage problems. But all that water got to go to Lake Marlboro, every bit of it. Everybody's trying to put their water in Lake Marlboro. That lake, when I was a kid, used to be 19, 20 foot deep. Right now, I could bring you 3 and 4, maybe 6 foot deep. It cannot hold no more water. It's, something needs to be done. Also, Jared Graves, he got Ascension Parish money. St. James, St. John got money. They're getting ready to put a levee from Sorrento all the way to LaPlace, install some more pumps. So if we get a bad hurricane blow in, all these stuff up above is dug out where the drain, that water's gonna flow back up north, and people's gonna flood who ain't never flooded before from a hurricane. So y'all better take that into consideration too.
Yes, sir.
And I think I agree with everything you're saying, and I think if you go back and look at some of the plans, some of these gravity drainage districts, Gravity 1 is really studying what they have to do to retain water. To protect areas south of them in the event of, the wind.
They ain't been doing a good job.
Well, I mean, I think that they've been doing some design stuff. I don't think they've got the funding for it yet, and they've been working toward that. But, and I think the gist of the basis for the reasoning behind putting this ordinance together was every time we stack a pile of dirt, their retention needs to get bigger to offset that. And so that was the reason for trying to put an ordinance together to limit it. So I think we're all trying to move in the same direction.
Yeah.
I just think that I
In-
wish
in
it
the area-
would be simple. I wish it would be really simple.
In the area that I live in, I think it needs to be separate from what you're trying to do up above. What you're trying to do is drain rainwater. You follow me?
Right, I understand.
And we got a good tract of land, and right now, I'm not in the flood zone, but it's right on the edge of my property. Next hurricane, I'll allow the flood.
Well,
But my son's gonna build on the property.
My simple way of thinking, me personally with this, is before someone brings in a pile of dirt, how are they gonna affect the people in that area?
Well, the nearest house is,
And that's, we do have a law that says you can't impact your neighbor.
yeah, it's a
But
state,
in
you
our
got state
parish,
laws.
in our parish, there's nothing that prevents you from doing it. I mean, you still go and build your house,
Yeah,
and
I
once you
understand
impact
that.
your neighbor,
But it wouldn't be no
what do we,
impact.
I mean, you're impacting your neighbor. I
But
mean,
to me, that's
we
telling
need
us
something before it's
we
built.
can't do what we want with our own property. That's like a dictatorship.
Well,
That's
is your-
not right.
Is your house, the house you live in now, is it built on dirt or is it built on
It's built on a slab.
slab? So, and given where you're at,
I hauled 16 inches 40 years ago when I built it.
and your son, when he builds, if he built there tomorrow, how much dirt would he?
3 foot.
3 foot? And y'all, okay, so I mean, and I guess that's kind of what we were looking at when we put, 24 and
Yeah, I know.
3 is to try to make
But,
it so that.
but when I'm getting at, Garrett, you got other people down there that's
Right.
afraid. And their kids don't want to have to move off. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to see nobody have to move.
Well,
And, they're afraid. You go up around the Head Island area, you go around French Settlement, Jeff, some of them's building 6 and 8 foot, they're afraid. And they're not gonna, even though they're building that high, they're not affecting nobody else.
well,
They getting ready for a hurricane.
But
Right.
the lady at that meeting,
Yeah.
the Monday night meeting, you were sitting next to me, you asked
Yeah,
the question,
I asked-
what is that
There's
question?
a lady that was here with the consultant that's what she does is floodplain studies. And she
Hey.
said every pile of dirt affects it. Now, where the pile of dirt makes a difference as to how it affects it.
Exactly.
But
And
it does affect it. It
Well,
does make the water go somewhere else.
You dig ponds, people dig ponds and lakes and subdivisions, saying that water, that's like a holding pond for this subdivision. Well, when you rain, that water level is gonna get a certain high, and it's gonna stay there. It's not sucking up all that water all the time, and that water that's gonna run off is gonna run into the rivers, get back to Lake Mortimer. Am I right or wrong?
yeah, you're right.
And,
Well,
and look, what
it's
this
called a
ordinance
detention
says,
pond, but that thing, it's not empty all the time. It's 3/4, it's gonna hold a level in it all the time.
what
It's
what
not
the
holding all
ordinance
that water
says
up.
too, if
It's
you
not
read
gathering
it,
up all that water.
if you can prove you're not gonna affect anyone, we're not saying you
Yeah, but
can't bring dirt in.
how would I do that? How would I prove that?
You gotta do what the drainage impact stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
I
I
don't
say,
know
y'all
any
need to
other
get
way.
together and do something different for the people in the lower end of the parish.
Yes, sir.
That's all I gotta say.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pico, appreciate
the
you.
input.
Appreciate you, Mr. Pico.
I have something.
So,
It's okay.
Yeah,
just
let
let
him
him
come on
Go ahead,
up.
go
stand
ahead.
up.
Shane Moore, once again, I'm in District One, Mr. Ward's district, and I'm a home builder developer. And I just have several questions here. So, we have two natural dams, or two dams running through our parish. We have the railroad and we have the interstate. And look, they're in spots, the railroad's 8 or 10 foot high, depending on where you're measuring, and the wall is 6.5 foot tall high. So that's one. Okay, so people that are building houses now, the railroad and the wall is not going away. They're not. So why would you prohibit people from being higher than that? That's obstructing the water from getting out. That's one question that I have, and I'm just asking questions. I don't really have the answers. My second question is, does this affect commercial developments?
I mean, ultimately, every permit has to abide by this ordinance. The only difference, I guess, is that since commercial developments are engineered dirt, and they're holding, the dirt's been engineered, and there's retention and some of that stuff, then if they build it to the level they need to and engineer it at that level, then, and all they gotta do is put a 2x6 on the side of the, on the dirt, then no, it doesn't affect them. If they engineer it and don't engineer all the fill, then it would affect them.
So let's just take that we're not using field dirt, that the elevation is it's over the 3 foot threshold, and they have to be, let's say, 5 feet. So how would you do a commercial strip mall on a 5 foot elevation on pylons? How would you park? So in my mind,
I think as long as he does a retention pond, he would be able to go up.
I mean, there's other engineering things that he can do, but yeah, there's gonna, I mean, if you engineer a commercial development and don't engineer it to the level it needs to be, then you're gonna have a problem. I mean, these developments that can be engineered, really, if you're gonna build a strip mall and it needs to be built at, some elevation X, and you don't engineer it to that, then yeah, you're gonna hurt yourself. I mean, but the reason you engineer to that is so that you have the retention and you have the capabilities of protecting the people downstream and upstream. If you don't engineer to that, you're not gonna need the retention, and so yeah, your fill ought to be limited. I mean, the reason, if engineered dirt is done properly, then you're protecting, based on our ordinance, that you're gonna retain 25 years and you're gonna look upstream and downstream at 100. And so you're really giving added protection to the people around you. If you don't engineer it to the level it needs to be, and you try to cut corners, and then you need to build it at a higher point, then yeah, it's gonna impact you.
I wasn't talking about cutting corners. I
would
was
like to
talking
say
about.
something there.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the question was, does this ordinance impact commercial developments?
Yes.
So, to me, the way I interpret it is, we have an ordinance that's followed by commercial developments where they are required to do gravity drainage studies and all this kind of stuff, and the engineers, review it, and they develop the retention ponds, and they may pile large portions of dirt, in order to do whatever kind of development they want. But that's all gonna go through the commercial ordinance approval process. And to me, this doesn't affect that in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's just my opinion. I mean, I
But
don't
shouldn't it
see
be
how
the
it
same
can,
across the
because
board?
there's already an ordinance laid out,
commercial
where
development.
elevations are shot if they need to be shot. I mean, they follow in the commercial development ordinance. I mean, I don't see where it would affect it in any way, shape, or form. But what I can say, and I'm gonna wait.
It's stricter
Closer
now
to
that
the
we
end, but-
actually made the requirements.
So look, I understand,
Yeah.
but what I guess I'm getting at, to make it come around full circle, so if a commercial development can put 5 foot of dirt,
Right.
it's still impacting,
10 foot,
it's still having a water impact
yes.
somewhere. So why is a commercial, just because the commercial guy's paying more money than a a single homeowner guy's paying is,
Well, they're required to do 25-year stormwater retention and do the ponds and stuff, but equally as important as fill dirt is redirecting the flow of the water. You know, we came to the meeting, Tuesday night, you know, the master planning committee, meeting. And, we listened to a lot of consultants talk, you know, and explain about a master gravity drainage plan. And, as equal, as important as the fill dirt is the, you know, redirecting the flow and, talking about outputs. And it seems to me, after listening to multiple councilmen talk and multiple engineers talk and all the constituents in Livingston Parish, that this is a very, very, very complicated ordinance to write, okay? And to me, you know, it may take some time. We all agree that we should practice good floodplain management. I mean, there's just no doubt that we shouldn't do that, you know, as constituents and as councilmen and just parish government and all that kind of stuff. But what is the best practice, to me, is the question at hand. And to me, this council, you know, Tracy, you were the match that lit the fire to create a master planning committee. And I went to the meeting Tuesday night, and one of their main goals to accomplish is to develop a master gravity drainage plan. You know, they're gonna scope out what is the best practice to manage, you know, the floodplain. And then what they're gonna do, and to me, what is the right thing to do, is they're gonna go do their homework. That committee's gonna go use consultants, and we're gonna try to figure out a way to fund, through maybe some type of grants or something, a way to do our homework and research and look at models and documentation and the different regions, and we're gonna look at the different watersheds. You know, you got the Tickfall watershed, you got the Amite watershed, and that group is gonna figure out what's best for Livingston Parish. And it is extremely hard for, you know, us, the ordinance committee, you know, and it's just gonna take a little bit of time, guys. So, I mean, we're discussing this right now, but you know, to me, what I think's best for Livingston Parish and all the constituents that live within it, especially all the constituents that live within the parish, is to send this back to that master planning committee and let them work on a master drainage plan, a master floodplain management plan, you know, and determine what the, you know, affects in Livingston Parish, what impacts us the most. I mean, everybody's got a different opinion. I mean, to me, one of the best ways to fix some of our drainage problems, and what I call drainage problems, is to increase the outputs. You know, a lot of times we went back and we had 10-year stormwater retentions, and the retention ponds, I mean, the pipes may be plugged, the earth may have shifted, and the dirt may be full. They might not be as deep as they used to be, and they're not retaining the water that they should retain because the ponds are full. So basically, you have no retention pond, and you just went and took a 50-acre subdivision, you know, and you piled up mountains of dirt, and you went and you redirected the flow with such a much more greater impact than a poor individual living in a rural area, you know, that just trying to build him a house pad. So, I mean, we're all recommending and we're discussing things and we're listening to the constituents and listening to engineers, but to me, this is a very complicated task that we're challenged with, and we need to take our time before we go taking people's rights away to do what they want with their property. We need to take our time. I mean, if it takes a year, I mean, we've been in office for 3.5 years. I mean, it seemed like yesterday we all just got elected. I mean, to me, the best thing to do, and we all talked about too, this ordinance right here, where we're gonna go greatly restrict property rights, it's gonna have minimal impact. It's gonna have extreme minimal impact when it comes to protecting the floodplain. You know, I just think we need to take a step back and send it back to the master planning committee. I'd like to say that the ordinance committee, last ordinance committee meeting that I was able to get here on time and attend, voted to send this to the master planning committee.
That
you
didn't
know?
exist yet.
Yeah. I mean,
The
Yes,
master
it did.
planning
Excuse me, yes, it
committee-
did.
It
It
did
did
not have-
exist.
we didn't even have a-
It did
Wait,
exist.
guys, wait,
You had
guys.
already put it in
Wait.
place, Mr. Garland. Yeah, you're the one putting it in place. No, don't start that.
No, y'all are not willing to tackle this at the ordinance committee level.
Are you not willing to let it go to the master plan?
Excuse
committee?
me, the hammer is being hit. We talked about not hollering over each other and interrupting everybody. I mean, everybody's
Take all the
entitled
fun
to
out of it.
He talked.
We don't represent the guy that started hollering.
Wait a minute, please.
We got
All right, so let's all try to be orderly and let's talk about this, you know, and let's let Mr. Bubba Harris go.
I never say too much. I do a lot of listening,
Yes?
but through the course of listening to each and every one of the council members since this thing has started, it's been everyone's goal is to help the people that already live here in Livingston Parish and
Amen.
keep them from flooding.
That's right.
When you go to piling up more dirt, you impacting those very people right there, and you're gonna cause them to flood,
That's right.
even worse.
Yep.
So I think it needs to be a lot more studied on this
I
before
agree.
we go.
Me
And
too.
if we're not gonna try to help the people that already live here,
What's the point?
yes.
That's right.
My point is, why can't, if you want the master plan committee to examine it, why can't the ordinance committee do it at the same time? Why can't you, because the ordinance committee is gonna require, the master plan committee is gonna require funding. So you're talking about pushing it off a year, maybe a year
Not
and a
true,
half?
not
when
true.
you could
Wait,
be
don't
doing it-
interrupt,
when-
don't interrupt.
When y'all could be discussing this at the ordinance committee level,
So,
which is the job of the ordinance committee.
okay.
Don't pass the buck. There's no reason why why both can't work on the same item at the same time. That's only my point. Everybody
Calm down, guys.
Everybody always says, well, we should be doing this. You shouldn't be doing this. This is more important. Why can't you do both? Everybody acts like it's
not an
like
either-or.
it's
We
a
need
not
to go
either.
on.
You can do both at the same time. If the master plan committee is going to address this anyway as an overall part of the master plan, why can't the ordinance committee take this and work on it themselves?
We
That's
did.
my only question.
We did.
Not
Did
really
y'all?
amendment.
Yes, we had 3 long meetings with the ordinance committee, and we called in engineers, developers, we called in home builders, and after 3 long, hard-fought meetings, we came up as an ordinance committee to recommend, send it to the master plan committee. And, because we know they're the ones that are gonna have the resources to make this happen. The ordinance committee, we just couldn't even have the information. There's some great people on the master plan committee that you established, Mr. Garlinghouse. These people are ready to tackle this issue and bring it to us in a timely fashion. There's no reason why these people shouldn't get to work on it.
That's true. And so let's keep orderly. Mr. Jeff Ard, would you like to?
I'm on the master plan committee, and from what I remember of the meeting the other night, the chairman, Mr. Gerald Burns, tried to start a gravity drainage study, and the master plan committee voted that we weren't ready to do that. We still needed to get consultant firms in here. We need to figure out how we're gonna fund this. We need to get with our Jennifer, Mark Harrell. I mean, we got a lot of stuff to do before that committee is ready to start tackling.
And this
them type of
ordinance needs
issues.
a lot of information, like engineers and drainage and
Try
stuff.
not to cut in.
So what I'm saying is, you're talking maybe a year down the road before the master plan committee is ready to actually start doing that. And we had a professional stood right here and said, every pile of dirt that we put on here affects our parish.
Yes, sir.
We need to slow it down. That's
Minuscule.
all we're saying. Slow it down. You know?
Okay, quit cutting in.
Let's go to point.
Okay, so good point, Jeff. Does,
So I have a solution. If you want to get something started immediately, you can start a culvert program further south and clean out the ditches and culverts that are
increase the
Collapse.
capacity of the outflow.
increase that. And look, you can start that tomorrow.
Yeah,
That would be effective.
that would be good.
Tomorrow.
You know
And
what?
look,
You know
if
what,
that
too?
happened, each one of y'all wouldn't have to spend a dime on reelection, because if you was doing that, the constituents would automatically put you in.
We have one problem with that.
What's that?
The workers don't work for us.
Yeah.
We're not the
But
administrative
we're one
branch.
parish. I mean, I've
But
heard that
we're
several
not the
times tonight.
administrative branch. Okay? The
All
parish
we do is
president
ask
tells
for
us
something.
what to do.
So that was a very good point, and I think
And look,
that,
that kind of leads me into my next question.
Go ahead.
Why is the burden of proof and financial burden gonna be put on the homeowner or the public for that? The parish is requiring us to either, do a retention pond or have an engineered survey, even in flood zone X, which is not flood zone.
Well, that's in the amendments that we talked about.
Well, I don't have the
I
amendments.
know it,
I
that's why we ain't to the.
I happen to agree that there is huge cost and unanswered cost associated with following this ordinance. I mean, that's just part of working out the details, you know, and that,
So look, I pulled a permit yesterday for a
Yes, sir.
house.
yes, sir.
I pulled one in January.
Mhm.
It's the same amount of roofing squares, and that's how they kind of dictate your permit fee.
Mhm.
So I looked at my permit, and it was more, it was a couple $100 more. And I'm like, this isn't right, and I checked it. So they checked it and brought it back, that's right. So just a little receipt book, out of a receipt book you get the first time. So after I paid, I got my printed out copy. So I had review plan fee on there, which I've never had before, $158 or so, added. And then I had a shingle permit fee on there, which I've never had before. So I'm getting, added costs put on me that I don't even know are happening. I'm just concerned that this may be another added cost. I mean, I make my living building homes.
There's no doubt if this was adopted as written, that it would definitely raise the cost of building a house for the private citizen in Livingston Parish, no doubt. Okay, so go, Mr. Scooter.
Okay, so you wanna send it back to the ordinance, you
Okay,
wanna
thank
send it to the review.
Thank you.
This is my concern.
Uh-huh.
If the review doesn't get us an ordinance to look at, how can they even review it? So let's send it to ordinance, let you guys hammer out and decide whether you wanna, what amendments you wanna put in, check on some cost analysis, like, you say a huge cost, we don't know how much the cost is. We know for the flood elevation certificate, but hammer it out in ordinance, and then you guys agree to bring it to the council and see if we want to send it to the review committee. The review committee is only gonna be hired, their job is not to review anything. Their job is to hire a consultant to update that master plan. These are just normal, run-of-the-mill people on this committee that have a big interest in their parish. So their job is not to change this. They're gonna get consultants to change it and then agree with whether they want it, what they want to present.
Okay. I would
So I
like to,
think what we need to do is send it to the ordinance committee.
that's a good point, but I would like to say
Get
something.
it right and then send it.
I would like to say something there. What I gathered from the meeting Tuesday night, this public record that anybody can go back and watch, is that that committee was going to work to hire some type of consultant and work with that consultant to develop a master gravity drainage plan
It's just part of it.
and to figure out a way what's best to manage the floodplain, and outline all those details, and to address, how do you treat, I mean, you heard the lady when she stood up here, it's on public record, she said that you should treat different regions differently. You might have to have this area over here that's highly populated with commercial developments and restrict the building over here, whereas over here, this rural, you might not need to restrict, I mean, she sat there and said all those things. So what I gathered was, let's let that group go do what they're planning to go do. I feel very, very confident that after talking to Mr. Mark Harrell today, that if that group of individuals on that committee works with him, that we can gather up some, funding, not actually taxpayer, but maybe some type of grant funding with studies and models to try to determine exactly what we should go and do instead of trying to guess and throw from the hip what we should do. And to me, if it takes a year to get it right, we owe the people of Livingston Parish to take the time to get this very, very, very important ordinance, floodplain management program, drainage plan program. We need to take that time to get it right. We owe that. I think that this would be wrong. I think that it is very minimal impact, and it greatly restricts the property rights, and I totally don't agree with it. And if anybody else in the audience has anything else to say, I'd like to hear it. And we're gonna get to the other,
Miss O'Neill.
Miss O'Neill in just a few minutes.
I didn't come here for that, but my name's Donald Sibley. I'm in Jeff Average. I got a question. Y'all brought a question up for me. I wanna hear.
Okay.
All right, say I'm gonna build a house over here. My elevation shot 2 foot of dirt. All right, I can start building my house. I build the dirt up. I say I go 10 feet above the elevation. What would that hurt? Would I have to hire an engineer to design this 10 feet?
I mean, I'd like to answer that. I mean, to me, it would depend upon your property and where your property was and your neighbors and the region and the watershed and all these different things. There's so many different variables. To me, and where you're talking about, Mr. Donald, it wouldn't affect them at all. But maybe, just maybe, in a certain area over here, in this area, it would have a huge effect.
Well,
So to me, to go try to write this thing and throw it in place and try to force it through without the data and without the research, I think it's horrible. I think it's a terrible thing to do. I mean, that's just how I feel. So
Yeah, but what would it,
I mean, to me, this
my
council,
permits require 2
this,
feet.
say that again?
My permits, they require 2 feet, and I build at 10. What would it hurt?
Can I say something?
Well-
That's my name.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And that's where I'm building a house. It's within 300 yards of Donald Sibley.
Yeah, he's parking in our joint.
They got
It
seven
ain't
on there.
bothering me a bit.
They got a bunch of
He
cities.
could build 10 foot and I could build 2 foot and it will not affect me.
It ain't bothering me.
Where
It
we
ain't
live
bothering
at.
He's
Not
right
now.
here.
Right now, that's
It
the
ain't gonna
problem.
bother me then. and it
Like I
ain't
say,
gonna bother
10
me
years
now.
I didn't come here for that, but I mean,
Hey,
y'all-
good point. I'm happy you came. I'm happy
You
you
know,
threw that out there.
What's
So,
the difference? I get my permit, it says 2 feet of dirt. I mean, you can get one anywhere in the parish, and I'm not saying 2 feet, it might be 1 foot. But just say I went above the elevation, what does it hurt?
So essentially, Shane, what you're
I
telling
can't-
us is
I
on
can't
your
see.
side of the world, it's okay, y'all build whatever you want, but restrict us.
no, I'm definitely not saying that. What I'm saying is it is hard to determine what you should do without going and doing your homework and researching and trying to figure out what's best.
Let the master plan.
Let the master planning committee develop a master gravity drainage plan and the best way to protect the floodplain,
I agree.
and then we go do
I
it.
agree, but we gotta give them something to work with.
You said
Right.
somebody else can advise me on my own property how to do what I need to do.
Well, no, sir. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is to let.
He is, just see
What I'm saying is
I'm
to let the
asking a question.
consultants try to figure out what's the best way to manage the floodplain,
In
and
different
then go
areas.
follow that plan.
that is gonna require
That
some
plan,
restrictions.
that
It
plan,
is.
Mr. Donald, may say that you're perfectly fine and you can do that, and it won't affect anybody, and you're great. And I think that it would say that. You
Well, the
know.
lady the other day, Tuesday night, actually told us, you're gonna have areas in this parish where y'all are gonna have to do a hard thing and tell people you can never build in that. And
Unless
that-
you're on
you
piers,
talk about
unless
what
you're on
people-
piers and stilts.
Wait
I
a
mean,
minute.
you'll never be able to bring dirt in.
Well, that's what she said, and that's hard pill to swallow, because that would be the last thing I'd want to do is tell you, you can't never build anything over there.
On your own
But you'd
property.
have to build right, but you'd
You
have to
pay
build
notes
it
and taxes and
prudently
all
so
that,
that
you
it
can't
doesn't
build
affect the
nothing.
rest of the parish.
And we could modify that plan, you know, we could modify that plan, but what I'm saying is it is extremely hard to do this type
Oh,
of
it
thing
is.
without models and studies and research and trying to figure out what's best. I mean, that's all I'm saying. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody else? Miss O'Neill, there's a Miss O'Neill out here.
Oh, she's
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
back.
Come
Come
on
back,
up.
Miss Cindy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Sibley, I appreciate it. We getting there.
My name is Cindy O'Neill. I'm state coordinator for the National Flood Insurance Program. I've been the state coordinator for 17 years. I've been in floodplain management for over 20 years. We really don't deal with insurance. We know a little bit about insurance, but we mainly deal with compliance and how people build in the floodplain and get their permits and things of that nature. And I will agree that any shovel of dirt makes a difference. I brought a few publications here I'd like for you guys to see. Unfortunately, I didn't bring enough for everybody, but I'll share them with you. This is the NFIP insurance report from April of this year. Pass that one down.
Pass it down. You pass it on down to the end.
If you look on page 8, it'll show you Livingston Parish and all the communities within Livingston Parish. Livingston Parish pays a total of over $11 million in premiums annually. They have over 16,000 policies. Total coverage looks like $3.5 trillion. They've had 9,925 claims since 1978, totaling $542 million, 506,285. So this is a very important program for Livingston Parish. This handout, at one of your meetings, I heard you discussing that if you brought it up on fill, if you raised it on pilings and piers, it wouldn't help your flood insurance. If you look at this page on the front where it says post, this whole page, not the one where it's divided into 2 sections, but the whole page where it says post, that means post firm or after your first flood insurance rate map. Post firm at BFE flood insurance premium, I think that's $200,000 worth of coverage, would be $1,874. A foot above, whether it's dirt or on pilings, you can cut it in half. 2 feet above, $649. If you go up to 4 feet, and that's the biggest premium savings they'll give you, it's $528 a year. So even if you didn't live in a flood zone, you'd only pay $450 a year. So pilings or piers makes no difference. It's just how you're elevated and how high.
It doesn't go from ground level, it goes from floor level?
It goes from the lowest adjacent grade touching your building. That's where your elevation starts. But the higher you build your floor level,
Right.
it's what they base your insurance premiums on.
That's what I was wondering.
Yes, sir.
Well, I got a question.
Okay.
So if you were in a flood zone and your base, you put dirt on your property and you came up, I don't know, 3 foot above the base flood elevation, are you required to have, what's your premium and how does that affect your premium?
If you're on dirt,
If you're on
you can
dirt.
apply to get a LOMA, a letter of map amendment, which would remove you from the mandatory purchase requirement.
And you wouldn't
But-
have to have the flood insurance if you did that?
Correct, but a bank can require flood insurance whether you're in a flood zone or not.
So a bank could require, but what if you had your own private personal money and you just wanted to pay for it?
Okay?
And you
Knock
wouldn't have to
yourself
pay
out.
flood insurance in
That's
any
your
way,
loss.
shape, or
Still
form?
can't affect
That's
your
your loss
neighbor.
when it floods.
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
If you were not allowed to put that dirt in there and you built up on piers, I'm just asking, and you were 3 foot above the base flood elevation, would you have to pay any money at all?
Can you loan?
To-
Loma, that's what I
Can,
want.
would you have to pay any money at all for flood insurance?
There's not a mandatory purchase requirement, but like I said, the bank can require it whether you're in the flood zone or not.
Okay, so
Whether
you,
you're 10 feet in the air or whether you're flat on the ground, the bank can require it.
so it
No,
would-
I think his question.
What my question is, would it be the exact same rules or payments if you built on piers 3 foot above the base flood elevation on piers, or what if you built 3 foot above the base flood elevation with a dirt pad and a cement pad?
It's
Is it
the same rate.
It's the
whatever
exact same
you are
rate?
above the BFE. The only difference is if you get a LOMA, because your lowest adjacent grade touching your building is gonna be above the base flood if you have that dirt built up. If your BFE, just say is 3 feet, and you build up 3 feet, the lowest adjacent grade touching your building is gonna be at or above the base flood elevation. You submit that documentation to FEMA, they will issue a letter of map amendment, and you will be removed from the mandatory flood insurance purchase requirement.
But up here in Beam, you cannot get a loan.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
But
So-
if you're 5 feet above, you can get to $545 a year.
So it's not treated the same. So if, that's what
For
I'm
the
hearing.
insurance premium, it's not gonna change it whether you're on dirt or whether you're on piles.
I agree with you, but you don't have to have flood insurance at all if you got private money and you put the dirt pad 3 foot
Correct.
above base flood elevation.
But
But
you
if you go
cannot-
in there and you put the piers above, 3 foot above base flood elevation, are you required to have flood insurance by FEMA?
not with
That's-
private
that's-
money.
That's the
If
question.
you
Not
got
with-
your own money, you don't have to have flood insurance, you don't have to have homeowners
The mortgage
insurance.
You don't have to have any insurance if you have your own.
Mortgage company requires it.
That
But
was
they don't
my
require
question.
it if you get a loan.
Unless you're in the city limits,
So
they
can you
require it
explain
no
what the
matter
difference is? Does anybody know what is the difference if you build up on piers versus if you build the dirt? I mean, because I've heard that there's a difference in fees.
Mr. Gary
There's
can,
not.
I don't think he wants to.
There's no difference in your flood insurance rates, whether you're on pilings or piers, it just has to do with the elevation. The only thing, if you're on dirt, it can remove you from the mandatory purchase requirement.
So you don't have to actually have insurance.
So if you're on dirt, you don't have to have the flood insurance and
If
pay the
you're
premium.
above base flood.
If you get
Right.
home with that.
But the mortgage company can require it, whether you're.
I ain't worried about the
out.
mortgage company
They
can
tried to
require
do
it.
it.
What I'm talking about is FEMA's requirements forcing
Yes.
people to pay.
You can on
FEMA
dirt.
doesn't force anybody to pay anything. That's
Okay,
the
well-
mortgage company that
I
requires
loaned
it.
out, and they still tried to make me pay it, and I fought them, and I got it.
And you're on dirt.
Your mortgage company required,
Yeah.
was trying? Yeah.
Somebody looking at a map in Minnesota
Yeah, I get you.
decided that I needed flood insurance.
Yeah.
After I made dang
When it-
sure I was out of
But you loam it out, you got a Loma, not a Loma F. You didn't generate the Loma by bringing in dirt. You generated the Loma because the map was different.
I was in X.
You were in
And they were
X,
still
okay,
wanting
so
me to
that,
do it.
I mean, there's a difference between am I correct? Is there a difference between a Loma and a Loma F with respect
Yes.
to?
Loma is FEMA saying there was an error in our map. We made a mistake. You shouldn't be in the flood zone. You shouldn't be in an A zone. So they're gonna give you a letter that says you're not in a flood zone. The Loma F is a letter of map amendment based on fill. You have brought in fill and they will charge you for that. There's no charge for the Loma, but a Loma F, there is a charge.
But yes, you can with F get out of the mandatory flood insurance unless your mortgage company doesn't let you. But if you at the same elevation on piers and you've got your private money, then you're out too. So it's kind of irrelevant.
And I'll tell you that FEMA's, they do a lot of statistics, they keep all these records of how many policies and claims. 40% of all of the claims for flood losses are for areas that are in the X zone, they're not in the special flood hazard area.
That's the big thing right there, guys.
Sue, do you know the statistics on 16, how much of Livingston Parish, how much of X was flooded in the parish at that point in
I
time?
could probably find out, it may take me a little while, but.
If we
But
could
there
bring
will-
this time, if we could get it, that'd be great, yeah.
How much?
I can say this much.
Go ahead.
I was in the X area. And I thought I was on the hill until I got 5 inches of water in my house. I had loaned it out. I'll never make that mistake again. I'll pay that flood insurance here on out.
And I can also tell you another statistic. If you live in a special flood hazard area, you have a 26% chance of being damaged by the 100-year flood event, but only a 5% chance of being damaged by fire. So how many people would purchase homeowners before they purchase flood insurance?
Every one of them.
Yes.
Yep.
So,
I've had both,
so
so I
this,
know.
this ordinance that we're trying to pass, it's by no means as hard as some areas ordinance are. It takes a minute step in a particular direction. With respect to CSR and CRS, all these letters get me confused. Would this ordinance be beneficial to the residents of Livingston Parish if we were still in the system? I mean, I'm just trying
I
to,
brought y'all some CRS that tells you all the different activities you can get points for and how many points you can get.
Oh, cool, that's good, I needed to.
The community rating system is similar to your homeowner's insurance. For every 500 points you get as a community, you get a class reduction. We were a class 9 here in Livingston Parish, so we got a 5% reduction. I can tell you Louisiana just got its first class 5. Jefferson Parish is receiving a 25% discount in their flood insurance premiums.
What did they have to do to obtain that they hadn't been doing?
They are enforcing higher standards. They have freeboard requirement, fill restrictions, their elevation certificates. They go by whatever is higher, whether it's the BFE, the center line of the road, or so many feet above the nearest manhole. Some communities in our watershed have X-zone requirements. They make you build above the base flood elevation in X-zone. Zachary does that. I can give you this other handout that I brought that shows you 42 of our communities in the state of Louisiana, it may be just 41 now, participate in the community rating system. Those 40-something communities make up 80% of the flood insurance policies statewide. So normally it's the communities that really need the premium breaks because they have a lot of policies in their community or participating in the community rating system. And this will show you how much each community is saving statewide. Here in Livingston Parish, it was almost $500,000 that, as a class 9, we were saving. That's annually. That's now going to come out of the economy here.
So by doing these things that we're talking about, we changed the 25-year rain event on major, subdivision developments up and downstream. If we put some limitations on fill, we do some more outreach to the communities, we can get that number back. We'll more than likely get an 8 instead of a 9. We're gonna save money for the people.
10% discount.
Okay?
And this,
if we don't work towards that, what have we done?
What are we now? So that's
we're out the
little
system.
money on the front end.
Right. You spend a little more on the front end to save for many years down the road.
Yeah.
this is called a what if. If you were a class 9, class 8, class 7, it's gonna show you how much you would save.
Absolutely. That's not.
Okay, is there anybody else
Please, no.
that would like to?
So a class 8 for Livingston Parish would mean almost $1 million a year in savings?
Yes, sir.
That's to our citizens within the parish that have flood insurance. Which over a period,
We can get to an 8 if we do the right things right here.
Walker's doing it, Denham's doing it.
It takes us.
Exactly.
That's the things
Did I
we
see an
can't
article?
control.
Gotta have these
Yeah, but
stream
you're
frontages.
referring to
What's that?
cities and
You gotta have these
municipalities,
stricter rules.
right or wrong?
There's a lot of parishes on
They
that
can pay a
list that
little
I
bit
just
more
sent
to build a
around that
house, but
participate.
they're gonna get their money back.
East
What do you
Baton
mean? What do you
Rouge,
mean by? What do you mean participate?
in the community rating system.
Right.
The community rating system
We
is
we
a part
used we
of
used
the-
to participate, but
Right.
we
They
just
are
got
a part.
reduced.
Things that help CRS.
The community rating system is a part of the National Flood Insurance Program. For the communities that go above and beyond FEMA's minimum requirements, they get rewarded
whatever.
with discounts to their flood
We
insurance
need to
premium.
get it to
So-
committee.
And we could. My question is, we can do that.
May 1st,
We
you can
can
apply again.
We can apply again, and we can do that, and we can get reduced rates without this ordinance.
I can
Agreed?
tell you that ordinance is gonna get you a lot of points in the community rating system.
So, I'm gonna ask one more question, and we're getting anxious up here. Hey, a little respect,
Oh,
a
I'm
little
sorry,
respect.
I'm sorry.
So, I went to, I know the DOT's got this new floodplain initiative. And I went to the Water College when they had a presentation, and I know that the deal at LSU at the river is gonna they're gonna operate the Amite River Basin thing for us also.
It's complete.
It's
You have a
complete.
study for the whole watershed that any of your developers can use.
So I've got a question. In some of that presentation, some of that discussion, there was talk of the state setting standards and implying rules for communities that don't take initiative themselves to address some of these issues.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, that's something that's being considered. So for parishes that choose to ignore, or parishes that don't take steps in the right direction to protect their floodplain, is it not true that the state's considering implying rules
There's
or?
$1.2 billion available through the Office of Community Development from HUD for the 2016 event as a result of that. 84% they said is gonna go to projects. They are wanting to tie the availability to get that money by saying you should adopt a free board. I think it's a good thing. I would encourage it. I would like to ask you guys one thing. In 2016, we didn't get any coverage on the national news, right?
Yep.
We were devastated, the whole state, especially Livingston Parish. In Houston in 2017, they were all over CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS. Do you think their event was worse than ours?
No.
Okay, after 2017, Houston, Harris County has adopted a 4-foot freeboard and no fill. So they've had enough. My question to you is, have we had enough?
No, yes, we've had way past enough. And if we don't make a move now and start doing these things, for one, to save money for the people,
Right.
and to protect our floodplain. We've all been here our lives, most of us been here our whole lives.
We keep talking about all this stuff
I
at
think-
babies, and this
Well-
gentleman back here brought it up. And, I know y'all all see it, and that dadgum thing down the middle of the interstate, who hadn't seen the video? Who hadn't seen the video of the
Everybody's seen
truck?
the video.
Everybody seen the video of the truck running down the interstate?
Yep, it was
That
driving on
joker-
one side.
And buddy, they are continuing to build it. I mean, now they putting some holes under it that I think I can clog with a couple loaves of bread.
You're right.
Okay?
Yeah, you're right.
But,
Yeah, that's
and-
this
and-
big.
And here we are, just saying, this kind of reminds me of dadgum Clinton. Clinton would screw up so big that everybody would ignore it because they were like,
Well, they're waiting to
they're not
fix that."
really doing that, are they? They're not really doing it.
I get you, Ted, I do.
And man, they keeping this thing going all across the parish. I
For
pass it all
safety.
the time. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
safety.
I've seen some 18-wheelers stop by those cables. I bet those cables restrict a heck of a lot less water than that wall.
They do, just
You
a
know?
little bit.
And I don't get it. And we just kind of, there we
Well,
go.
the wall-
More concrete, more welded
I'll
rebar.
make this statement, and
I'm coming
by
back from
no
the
means
Gulf.
defending the wall, because I said I'm gonna make this statement, man, by no means defending the wall, because the wall put water in my house. Without it, there's
My
no
sister's
doubt in my
house.
mind whatsoever, there wouldn't have been a drop of water in my house with that wall not there. But the reason they say the wall is there is because it was a project called Go Wider, and they actually moved the lanes inside, creating, they had to have a light barrier.
Well, they couldn't put the catch fence
Yeah.
because
Oh, I
it's too
get it.
close.
That's what they
Yeah.
say, but what they created was a giant dam that held water on one side.
Well, they still
To
don't.
keep the lights out of the other
Sure,
drivers.
well, but when we put a pile of dirt up, the water goes around it. When we put that up, no water goes around that joke.
And also to point out that before, that area in between was a low area that channeled water. If I remember correctly, it's 13 inches higher before the wall even starts.
Yep.
Yeah,
So it's 13 inches level with the like higher than the
plus the.
Without
plus
one
the
more,
wall. Instead of a
Yeah.
regression,
without one
it's
more
13
bit
inch
of drainage underneath it that they could have put in while they were doing it.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but that fellow there brought it up.
Okay, so, does anybody else from the audience have anything else to say?
Just say no.
Okay, so, is the council ready to,
Got one coming.
oh, no, ma'am,
Oh,
come on
no,
up.
we said just say no.
Okay, Vanessa Thompson, Northville Road. And I was just gonna say about, during all that discussion about building on piers, but I think I see why people maybe don't wanna build on piers, because you don't get that loma or whatever, even if you build above the base flood elevation.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Well, that's what she
I
was
think she
saying
was
was the
confused.
difference.
No, she's right. If
Well, you're
piers, you
right.
can't get along.
If
with.
You don't need it.
Piers you can't get along with,
You
but
don't need
sometimes
it.
you don't need it.
So, but also commercially, we went to Gulf Shores, Alabama one year, and there was a dollar store on piers. So you can build commercial property on piers also.
It's just very expensive.
And if you wanna do a study, we've had enough rain out there that if we just travel a few roads and stuff, we'll get a good study, good look at it.
Y'all got a motion?
Okay,
Close the.
okay, so we're now gonna close the public hearing. On agenda item number 14. All right, do we have any motions on the floor to adopt this ordinance, or to, what we got here?
Yeah, I made a motion to send it back.
So we have a motion on the floor by Tracy Girlinghouse to send this particular ordinance back to the ordinance committee.
Yeah.
And we have a second by Mr. Jeff Ard. And we have a comment by Mr. John Wascom.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to send this not to the ordinance committee, but to the master plan committee. As this particular ordinance, as it is written, has been to the ordinance committee 3 times. We've worked hard on it, interviewed people, and we know that it's more than what we want to tackle as an ordinance committee, because this master plan is going to bring a whole parish-wide scope into it, talking about topography from the entire parish, different, it's gonna have to be different areas of the different districts, are gonna have to have different, regulations. So I'd like to make a substitute motion that we send this to the master plan committee, let them really get this ordinance right, because the ordinance committee said, it needs to go there too. So that'd be my substitute motion.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion on the floor to send this LP ordinance 19-12 to the master planning committee to determine,
Just to make a recommendation.
to make
this
a
council
recommendation
To get a fill dirt ordinance.
to get a field ordinance. Okay, so,
How long
do
you
we
think-
have a,
How long do you think it'll take for that to happen?
Well, Mr. Gerald Burns serves on that board. He told me if we task him with it, 90 days.
That's if it's funded.
I think.
You
that-
don't have to be funded, Mr. Girlinghouse. Why do you keep saying that? Because the ordinance committee is not funding this. This is a put together an ordinance. Why do you think it has to be funded to put together an ordinance?
Because in order to do the studies to properly get the
No, they can call in
information that you need.
engineers from gravity
You know,
drainage. They can
why
call
don't
in.
we-
You don't have
but
to
wait,
have money.
When we finally hire a consultant, that we're gonna have someone that specializes in the floodplain
So-
that's gonna
So you
walk us
want to do
through
an
it.
ordinance without studying it?
Regardless of how long it takes, we got the motion to send it to the planning, to the master planning committee. Do we have a second on the floor for this substitute motion?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Bubba Harris. I call for the vote
For the substitute motion.
for the substitute motion.
Mr. Talbert?
No.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wascom?
Yes.
Mr. Lidwell?
No.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
No.
Mr. Ard?
No.
Mr. King?
No.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
No.
Motion fails.
Nice. No
Okay,
comment.
motion fails. So we have a motion and a second. The motion was by Tracy to send it to the ordinance committee. We have a second by Jeff R. to send it to the ordinance committee. I call for the vote on that.
Mr. Talbert,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
No.
Mr. Wascom,
No,
Mr. Laybill,
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
it doesn't matter. It don't really matter.
No.
Mr. Averett,
Yes.
Mr. Ard,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Yes.
Okay, I have a question. If the ordinance committee makes the same recommendation to send it to the master plan committee, what do you, then what?
And we can say you
Then
can.
Mr. Talbot can bring it back up to the parish council again?
I guess we'll be voting on this again next week. Okay. So,
Wait a minute. I know one thing. If the ordinance committee
mhm.
has the votes, and I'm just gonna say send it to the master plan.
Which we did.
Which we did.
Right. Is this like our legislative body, the state, once the committee says something, if it doesn't pass, that's where it stops?
The council is not required to go with the recommendation of the ordinance committee.
The legislature is not required to do with what comes out of committee. It can be addressed on the floor and overridden. Same thing in the state,
Right.
same thing in the U.S. House, same thing in the U.S. Senate.
That's right.
Because the ordinance committee membership is not reflective of the whole council.
Right.
Mr.
But typically, they do go with the recommendation of the committee.
Okay, I'd like to ask one question, and I want the answer, if that's okay. And I promise you, I'm not even gonna rebuttal, I just wanna hear the answer. One more time, tell me again why you want the ordinance committee voting on this, discussing this, and not the master plan committee? Would you tell me that one more time, and I'll shut up?
Okay, I'll tell you. I think that we need action on this before, to some degree, before the master plan is intact and able to be implemented. At the end of the day, we're gonna have to make a decision as leaders here. Do you want to protect the people that live here at the cost of the people who want to live here? Because that's what it boils down to. Do you want the people who want to build a house here, do you want to protect their rights over the people who have a house here? Before I came here today, I had to drive in my neighborhood and water was already over the road. Now I live in the city limits. Walker does a fairly great job at cleaning it, but I know a lot of that rainwater, a lot of that comes from buildup, and I'm not from building piling of dirt outside the city limits and within the city limits. I've lived in the same neighborhood for 49 years, except for the time
You've
I was
answered my
in
question.
service. No, you asked the question. I'm giving it to you, Mr. Wascom.
You're going way out the.
Well, I mean, then don't ask the question you want a complete answer to. I'm just saying.
You're answering
Something
way
has
more
to
than
happen.
what I asked.
Something has to happen, and it's all of us. It's all of us as leaders to make the hard decision. Because the decision is this: all the talk, all the fluff. We're going to have to put something on somebody that is going to cost them money in order to protect the people who elected you to sit in the seat you're sitting in.
Sounds good.
I agree with that,
That's what I'm
Tracy, but that goes back to what we was talking about before I brought it up. We're all wanting to protect the people that live here now.
Exactly.
But when we go to putting 24 inches to 3 feet of dirt under new buildings and all, that water has got to go someplace.
You're right.
And it's the people that just barely made it through the flood, it's gonna put enough water there where their house is gonna flood.
Bubba, so let me ask you a question. So if that 24 inches and 36 inches with 0 and 0, would you be more in favor of this ordinance?
Yes, because that
Okay.
way they couldn't put any field under
You're
their house.
protecting them, period, and that's hard. We said that'd be hard, but that's where we need to go.
So where we need to go is the entire Livingston Parish go to 0 fill. Is that what you're saying?
Agreed. It all runs downhill.
Totally disagree.
I'm not necessarily saying
I
that.
find
Yes,
it.
you are.
No, I'm not.
If the study
Wait.
yes.
Wait. Seriously though.
If the study
Let's
would
quit
indicate
cutting in and cutting out. But
You asked the question.
well, my question is this: how do you expect the ordinance committee to get this right without taking the same amount of time that it would take the master planning committee to gather up the research and figure out exactly? I mean,
Well, y'all be
You
there
want
for
us-
2 weeks and not once a month.
Okay,
That'd help.
so
I
let's
think
just
your
move
master
on to
plan
the next
committee
agenda
is
item.
too
We've
far.
already voted. Agenda item number 15. Introduction of an ordinance. Establish a certified fire prevention bureau for Livingston Parish Fire Protection District Number 4 to perform inspections on behalf of the fire marshal as specified by RS 1563. Mr. Jeff Ard and Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse.
Hey, Chris, thank you, man.
Somewhere I have this. Sandy, do you have this where you can read it?
Yes.
All right.
This will be proposed ordinance.
Yeah. Go ahead, read it, Sandy.
This will be proposed ordinance 19-13. This is an ordinance to create the Livingston Parish Fire Protection District Number 4 Fire Prevention Bureau by adding section 6-96 Fire Prevention Bureau to chapter 6 Fire Prevention and Protection, Article 2, Division 5, by establishing the Bureau's definition, intent, and regulations pursuant to revised statute 40-1563, in addition to the adoption of the code of the most recent state of Louisiana adopted version of the National Fire Protection Agency Life Safety Code, and as a maintenance code, the state of Louisiana Uniform Fire Prevention Code as defined in revised statute 40-1578.7. The public hearing will be at 6:30 on May the 24th.
All right, Fire Chief Wascom was here. He sat through our long discussion and he had to leave because we have people in need that are flooding right now. But basically, what this does is it puts an investigator in Fire District 4. So whenever there's a home fire, they can start doing their own investigation. They don't have to wait on the state fire marshal to come do it. And if they deem that it's arson, they would then step back. State marshal comes in, he takes over. The person that has been trained for this is already a firefighter in Fire District 4, so we're not having to hire somebody new. It will also bring the point down for the rating, which will in essence save people money in Fire District 4 on their fire insurance. So I think this is a very good thing for Fire District 4, and I commend Chief Wascom for going the extra mile to figure out how to make this happen for us. So I would like to make a motion to accept this order.
That was well explained, Jeff. Thank you for that very much. We have a motion on the floor by Mr. Jeff Ard to introduce this ordinance. We have a second by Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse. We have a question by Ms. Sandy.
Tommy pointed something out. I'm one day off. It's not gonna be May 24th. It's gonna be Thursday, May 23rd for the public hearing at 6:30. May 23rd.
Okay, good. May 23rd will be the public hearing for this ordinance. All right, is there any discussion from the audience on this particular ordinance? No? Any more discussion from the council? We got a motion by Mr. Jeff. We got a second by Mr. Tracy. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right. Item number 16, adopt a resolution to name the extension of J.W. Lane for 911 addressing purposes, only 2,112 feet currently maintained by the parish, located in Council District Number 8.
The new section of this road will not be maintained by the parish. They just need to extend it so that they can put some more addresses for 911 purposes.
Same thing I did with
same
in my
thing you did
district the other day.
So,
Yep.
So I'd like to make that motion.
And we have a motion by Mr. Tabb to adopt that resolution. We have a second by Mr. Jeff Averett. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right. Item number 17, adopt a resolution to approve a waiver for the number of lots off of a servitude for a proposed family partition for Mr. Richard McCoy, located off of LA Highway 42 in Council District Number 8. Mr. Tableau Bell.
This is off of the Critter Code deal that the Watts 5 are doing, and it's, I talked to Billy today and some of the Watts bunch. They're still moving toward making that a parish road. They're working on it pretty hot and heavy. Once that becomes a parish road, this will be kind of a moot point, but right now, this guy, he's got some lots he's trying to bust up for his grandkids who are like 8, 9, and 10 years old. Jeff knows who they are.
Be a while before they use them.
They're gonna be a while before they use them, but he just wants to get it in place for him. That's kind of part of his little legacy he's wanting to do. So I'd like to see that happen. So I'll make that motion.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Tab Lobel. We have a second by Mr. Jeff Averett. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right. District Attorney's report.
I don't have a report even when the meeting's over at 7 o'clock, so I certainly don't have a report.
35. He said he's on salary. He don't get any extra for his long weeks.
All right. What about what about the ordinance committee? Is there any report from the ordinance committee chair?
The ordinance committee did not meet this week because I met with Mr. Eddie Idell, who's been working on a sewer ordinance, and it wasn't complete yet, and Mr. Idell wanted more time, so we didn't meet this week. And we will obviously meet next week to discuss at least a little bit on film. But we're probably gonna take up, if the sewer ordinance is somewhat close, we'll probably take that up first, so that we don't bypass it completely.
So that it actually gets done.
It actually gets talked about.
So the finance committee report by Mr. Tracy Gerlinghouse.
Finances are on schedule. Everything looks pretty good. Now, I had asked her about funding. If there was any funding any room in the budget for the master plan committee going forward. She said that we're kind of in the middle of an audit right now, but she said that she would get back to us and let us know, the next committee meeting.
Perfect.
See if there was anything in the 2019 budget we should squeeze some money out for.
Great. All right. So, is there any councilman
I got a
comments?
couple things.
Okay.
Yep. I'd like to wish the Dahl baseball
Me
team
too.
good luck in the championship game this weekend. And I'd also like to wish Miss Angie Cornett a happy 29th birthday.
And you made it stay up half the night at the council.
And I'd like to congratulate the Holden ladies softball team for a third straight state championship.
State championship.
That means we get to see them up here soon.
Yeah, pretty daggum good.
That's nice.
And you'll probably get to see them 2 more times.
And I would like to say Fire Protection District number 11, that renewal tax passed. That is a wonderful thing. That's a great fire district up there north of Albany. So does anybody else have anything good to say?
John, you want to
Go,
talk
Tracy,
about,
go.
the other election?
Oh, it's not good.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, go ahead and talk about the other one.
Why don't you break the ice and get it started?
No, you go ahead.
Wait, what are we talking about here, buddy?
No, go ahead.
Tracy, you go, buddy.
Wednesday morning, one of Walker High's graduates, was a quarterback, 2017 graduate, Jacoby Scott, lost his life coming home from college. Got into a car accident. I knew this kid. He was a good kid. I mean, respectful and talented and funny and bright. And it's just, it's a tragedy of unimaginable.
Yes, you're right.
So I would just like to ask the community to keep his family in your prayers. He was coming home for the summer. Finished his classes.
I'll Walker in your prayers, because it's a big deal
He
with
was
Walker.
he was a friend of both my daughters, and so I had the opportunity and the pleasure of talking to him a few times. He's very talented. He's very just bright and just a good kid. And I just want to ask y'all keep his family in his prayers.
All right.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy. Does anybody else have anything to say before we adjourn?
And I'm gonna second that motion.
So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Tab Lobel to adjourn this meeting. We have a second by Jeff Averett. Is there any opposition from the audience?
No, I don't think so.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right. Oh, man. Don't get in that bathroom.
Okay.
Make sure it was in the